heart's about to break, tormented and attacked, lost from when we wake, with no way to go back. I'm standing on my own, but now I'm not alone.
Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I just like to post pictures of my drawing. Also, I have posted a link to the Marvel fan site, which will have a plot synopsis and character backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. So feel free to check that out if you'd like. We are going to be looking at Avengers number 276 from 1986. We have been covering this story arc called Under Siege. So I have the other ones available. I believe it was a 6-issue. It's about a 6-issue story arc. It started in Avengers 273, and we've got 2 issues left here. So here we go. So throughout this whole time, we haven't had Thor, and Thor is showing up here. I love it. So John Buscema is the penciler, and Tom Palmer is the inker. Now, Tom Palmer is one of the most distinctive inkers in history. You can immediately tell when he inks anyone, and you go, oh, Tom Palmer inked him. John Buscema has a beautiful line, but Tom Palmer, who uses a nice thick brush, just brings this to another freaking level. Another thing that Tom Palmer uses are zipatones, and you can see him using the straight line here, and then the dots here, and then different dots here, and just to create some shading and things like that. Tom Palmer, rest in peace, both him and John Buscema. Neither one is with us anymore. Just superb artists, but Tom Palmer is so distinctive. There's some other inkers that are very distinctive too, but mostly because they're pencilers. Like, for example, Mark Teixeira, he's an artist, period. He just brings out everything. Bill Sinkovich is also another one, but man, oh man, you can put Tom Palmer whenever, if anybody, and you can go, oh yeah. So, all right, so we've seen the Masters of Evil kind of take it to the Avengers. So this is the Avengers now fighting back. So if you remember, Hercules has been in a coma, and Ant-Man, who is not Hank Pym, is Scott Lang, and the Wasp are there. So Ant-Man is grilling the cops for not being there when Absorbing Man and Titania had attacked. Wasp says they did all they could. And this sergeant here is asking her if she knows why they had attacked. And she says that they were a part of a terrorist group out to destroy the Avengers, the Masters of Evil. Roger Stern is the writer. And here we got our credits with John Buscema basically providing the breakdowns and Tom Palmer sort of doing the heavy lifting as the finisher. So a breakdown, the difference between breakdown and pencils is a breakdown are just very loose sketches, and a finisher basically finishes the drawing, like as it says. So they do not just the inking rendering, but getting all the details done. The penciler basically is just giving them a guide. So she explains. So basically, we're gonna get a recap of stuff that's already happened. So I'm just going to sort of kind kind of move on here from those three panels here. Here the doctor comes in and says that Hercules is still critical, but he's stabilizing. Um, he's never seen anyone like that sustain injuries like he did and live. He says it's almost like, he's the Hercules of mythology. And Wasp says he is. And then she asks to be excused. Ant-Man and Wasp shrink down and off they go. They're gonna go get some help. And here I love the surprising. So again, some zipatones there. So we're back in Avengers Mansion, and Captain America and the Black Knight are watching the beatdown of Jarvis, who's screaming while Mr. Hyde is beating him. So they're not so much showing the beating, but you get the sense here. And Mr. Hyde is saying, "Don't pass out yet, old man. Scream more. I want the heroes to know what awaits them." So Black Knight says he needs his sword so he can stop him from killing Jarvis, but he can't find it. There's a mystic bond between them, and no matter how much he concentrates, he's unable to get the sword. Turns out, of course, that the sword and Captain America's shield are in some kind of energy field and unreachable. So, and outside, of course, it's got this dark energy that they're using from that character called Blackout here. The soldiers here, they've tried to even use a bazooka, but nothing can penetrate that, and that they may bring an airstrike. And of course, this soldier says, "In Manhattan, that's crazy." So, in the command center, the Wasp is in there, and the whoever the commander tells them that it'll take hours for an armored division to get there, and an assault could be launched sooner, but such a move in such a densely populated area would be unthinkable, and says Zemo has them over a barrel. And he asks, "What was it that you called it?" And the Wasp says, "Dark Force, Colonel Jordan." So it's a colonel. I love how they have the colonel smoking a pipe, very old fashioned. They didn't do that in the 80s, I'm quite sure, but they're still referencing the World War II days, I would imagine. Anyway, the Wasp says, "Let the Avengers handle it. They have expertise and experience at handling such a threats," and then he doesn't need to bother with the soldiers. And she says, after all, it is their facility that's being seized. And the colonel says he's putting her in an awkward position because he's responsible for this operation. Eventually, he's convinced and says, "We'll try it your way," and asks her what they need. And then, of course, it says moments later. This soldier here thinks this is Hank Pym and says that he's been a radio man for 5 years and he's never seen anybody hook up a satellite comlink that fast. He, of course, corrects him, saying he's not Hank Pym. He's retired now, and give him the costume and just to call him Ant-Man. So the Wasp is calling Thor, leaving the message of Sigurd Jarlson. That was Thor's alter ego during this time. I've also have been doing Walt Simonson's run on Thor. Feel free to check that out. You can see how he became Sigurd Jarlson. So she's leaving him a message here, saying that they need his help. And here she's thinking they need everyone's help, and she wishes she knew what happened to Captain Marvel, which of course we go to her. So Captain Marvel says there's no end to the darkness. It goes on and on forever. It does not seem like she'll escape it, but then she decides she better not give up, and remembers, that she gets sort of like explaining it to the reader. I mean, this is why it's done. So a little exposition here, but basically remembering how they were trapped at the at the Avengers mansion, how she's encased in the Dark Force, and now she's trapped in there. And so again, going kind of back, just giving a recap. So we will just kind of move on. Here she sees another light, similar to the one she saw last issue, and she decides to go toward that light source. It might be a way out. And now here it just says in a California waterfront here. So this character's called the Shroud, and he's going after this bad guy here. And so he points a gun at him, and he controls the dark. And suddenly there's a light here, and Captain Marvel comes out. And then while the Shroud, while he's distracted by Captain Marvel, the Shroud hits the bad guy and asks Captain Marvel if she's okay. She recognizes the Shroud here. It says they met in issue 241, and asks where she is, and he says it's San Francisco. He doesn't know how she got there, but that he came out from her. And she says, I was trapped in a dimension of darkness, and there was a light. So the Shroud must have called that darkness, and when he did, she had seen him calling it, so I was able to get out. So now we're in New York. So we have Dr. Druid here, and this guy's giving him his itinerary. And of course, there's a news report on the what's going on with the Avengers, and he thinks that he's had a buzzing in his head about a half hour, and he wonders if the Avengers are some way connected, especially now with the mystery all over the news. And he says perhaps if he clears his mind, he may be able to concentrate. And of course, he can hear the Black Knight concentrating, trying to get, and he says, he's being held captive. So the assistant here asks, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Changing." And he says, "Hey, changing? Why? None of your appearances call for formal attire." And he walks out now, dressed in his costume, and he says, "My appointments will have to be rescheduled, Henshaw. Some things are more important than promoting a new book. He has an old debt to repay." So real quick, back to Dr. Druid. Dr. Druid is an old character, even predates all the other Marvel a lot of them, except for those that came throughout World War II and stuff like that, like Captain America and stuff. But he's from 1961, so his first appearance was in Amazing Adventures #1. So he's been around for a while, but it's just one of those he's not used very often. So Ant-Man tells the Wasp he wasn't able to reach anyone, none of the West Coast Avengers, and sunspot activities keeping him from reaching the Black Panther in Africa, which it's hilarious. But she says she hasn't had luck in the local level too. The Fantastic Four are out of town. The Vision, the Scarlet Witch are off on vacation. Like, really, they're not going to cancel their vacation for this. And the Falcon's down with the flu. So he asks, what do we do now? Look for Spider-Man, Daredevil, anyone who might help. And he says, and if we can't, then she says, then they're on their own. So suddenly, Captain Marvel shows up. Yes, she was Captain Marvel during this time. I know that she goes by Photon now, but she was Captain Marvel during this time. So they're glad to see her, and it kind of gives the everything that happened. So and then Thor shows up because he received the message. So, and it says, of course, this story takes place between pages 5 and 7 of Thor 373. So we have not gotten to Thor 373 yet, where I'm covering it. So, all right. So he introduces himself to Ant-Man, and off they go here. These stories are so dense. I wish I could do 2 issues at a time, but how these stories are so dense. So, all right. This soldier says there's no change in the cube, and this guy's thinking what could be going on, and they wonder what that thing is made out of. Inside we have Moonstone and Blackout. Blackout is like under control. So she goes, we trust you to protect us with your barrier. Do you trust me? And Blackout says yes. And she asks more than Zemo, and she says no, trust Zemo. And of course she curses, which is the kind of like in cartoons where they go "Arr, arr, 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 arr," or something like that, or it's how they would depict cursing without cursing. So she of course thinks that if she could break Zemo's hold over him, the Masters of Evil could be hers to lead. I don't know. I don't see how people would call themselves the Masters of Evil. What a name. All right. So here, the wreckers are looking through. This is Pile Driver and this is Goliath, asking if they find anything, and he's like, nothing worth stealing. So, and then this is Thunderball, and then that's Bulldozer, and this is why they put their names here so that people know who they are. That's how they would introduce it to the reader. So, and there's nothing to steal, and so someone's talking to them off panel here. Look at the two of Earth's mightiest heroes. Ha! Of course, it's Mr. Hyde, who's got a beaten up Jarvis here. He says Zemo was right. You fell easily before our superior numbers, and you couldn't even save this old fool. And now you guys will also die. And if you notice just how quickly the story moves, it's they don't do those today now. There's a little bit more room for the art to breathe, but at the same token, the story is not as condensed. So Zemo tells Fixer to be careful with those hard drives. Back then, they were kept on these discs that had, they could easily be damaged. So a Fixer tells him not to worry. And then the lights go out. And they think Fixer did it. He's like, I didn't do this. So Zemo tells him to find the cause of the outage and correct it. And he, of course, says, right away, Byrne. So Yellow Jacket points at Captain America's shield. They, of course, know that without the barrier, that even though the shield is still there, the Black Knight's sword is missing. Which, of course, the Black Knight was able to get it. And Hyde is like, who turned off the lights? He's like, it doesn't matter. Darkness will not spare you, Avengers. And then Captain America hits him. And then the Black Knight hits him. And then Captain America hits him. And then Black Knight hits him. So they're getting even for Jarvis and for themselves for kind of getting beat up. And then he's like, goes after them. You can see the Black Knight trips him with his own sword. He ends up hitting the wall or fall, or is that the floor? I don't know. But then, because he's super strong, so he gets up angry, and you can see him tossing everything around him. And suddenly Captain Marvel shows up. She says he's not going to get his chance to do what he had threatened to do. And here comes the Wasp from that hole that Captain Marvel made, and then uses her sting powers to hit him in the eyes and blind him. He, of course, is like, I'm going to kill you. And he's just stumbling around. Ends up hitting Thor, and I love it. Thor just stands there. And he falls unconscious. So, all right. So, Captain America has Jarvis. He says he's alive, but he's taken a terrible beating. And Thor says, "Did Hyde do this?" Captain America says, "Yes, under Zemo's orders." And he says, "Then they both must pay dearly." Of course, Yellow Jacket overhears. Again, some zipatones here. So, Yellow Jacket's gonna tell Baron Zemo, and he now knows Thor and Captain Marvel, and he wonders how she managed to escape their trap, and says that their arrival puts them in jeopardy, and they have to depart. She says, "What about the fixers?" And Zemo's like, "He can defend himself." And even though she doesn't like the fixer, she wonders how Zemo can be so over someone who is helping him, and she realizes Zemo would drop any of them in a second without any hesitation. So outside, here comes Dr. Druid, and he touches this and says this substance is from another world. He can sense it, um, and knows that another mind is controlling it. And he um, uses his own telepathy to try and reach out to Blackout, which allows him to um, walk in as Blackout opens up a little portion of it. Meanwhile, the Fixer's still working on this, and Ant-Man comes from below, makes himself regular size, and hits him. So he drags him out, asks about Jarvis. Captain America says it's no good. So Thor says he needs medical attention, um, and his injuries are extremely um, serious. He says moving him through that tunnel that Captain Marvel made would be too risky. And so Ant-Man says the only way to get him out is then to go through the mansion and through all the people that are there. So Black Knight says that, or sorry, not Black Knight. Wasp says they have to deal with them, but Jarvis' safety comes first, and for him and the Black Knight to rig up a stretcher. And she also tells Captain America to that Black Knight also needs medical attention, and wants Thor and uh, Captain America to take the lead. The Wasp was in charge of the Avengers during this time. They all kind of voted. So, all right. So Captain Marvel arrives and says the underground levels are clear, but there's trouble waiting. And of course, on the first floor. So here come the wreckers. So they're waiting for people to come up. Here comes Captain America, and he jumps out of the way. And then Thor throws his hammer, hits this guy. So, and then Thor uses lightning from his hammer and does some kind of trick that I've never really seen him do. It's probably from the 60s or things like that. But yeah, looks I don't know. Is he electrocuting them or putting them in a force field? If he's electrocuting them, then yeah, I've seen him do that. But um, so yeah, that's what he must have done. So I thought he was putting them like on some kind of force field or something. So the wrecking crew is down, and Captain America says, "Look out!" And here comes Goliath, who grabs Thor. Odin's blood, as he likes to say. He says that he'll be able to beat Thor the same way Hercules did, and when they're through with him, we'll see how tough Captain America is without the shield. So Dr. Druid is sort of like Jean Grey, telekinetic. So he's using like his mind telekinetically to go up here because he feels that Blackout is up there, and of course, there he is with Moonstone. And then Moonstone asks him why did he drop the barrier, and he appears to be in a trance. Captain Marvel shows up, and then a blackout hits her, and so she's gonna go ahead and get away, and find a place to hide. So Captain Marvel uh, hits Blackout in the neck, knocking him down, and off she goes to go after Moonstone. Dr. Druid is impressed, and here comes Captain Marvel going after Moonstone. So she's trying to think of how she could possibly get away. And Captain Marvel's kind of zipping around her. And as she zips around, she creates like some kind of energy fields anyway, pushes her toward that cliff there. And she ends up hitting her head and knocking her out. And so Zemo's gonna go up. You can see he's got, although he had it already in a little bit, Captain America's shield. He says, go get ready for the launch. He's gonna go get Blackstone or Blackout and Moonstone. She says, yep. And she says those two must still be useful, or he would have just left without them. And when he walks out, he sees Dr. Druid with Blackout. He shoots Dr. Druid and helps Blackout out. He says, on your feet. Enemies are around us. And he's like, enemies? And he says, yes, one must have struck you down, but you're in good hands now. So here Captain Marvel is looking for Moonstone and tells her not to move. She must have broken her neck. And he says, I thought you were gonna that she was gonna kill her. As they're talking, Moonstone tells him he had lost control of Blackout and realizes that Zemo's the one that was in charge of Blackout. And we end the issue with Zemo, love the Zipatones, telling Blackout that he can save the day for them and defeat the enemies. You can send them away, mansion and all, into the Dark Force dimension. And of course, Blackout says, yes, kind of question mark, and at the same time, exclamation point. So, all right, so we're going to call it a day with this issue. Hope you liked it. So, Avengers 276, written by Roger Stern, and then art by John Buscema and Tom Palmer. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.